you've made it. You're still in the room.
They get a prize.
That you get a prize as well, indeed. So my name is Elan Gepner-Dales, and I am the Executive Director of Yes for Schools, a program of the International Association for Human Values. I'm also here as a representative of the Art of Living Foundation, of which I'm a teacher and supporter. Our work is really in providing the individual sustainability tools for transformation of communities. So across all the sectors of which we work, whether it's personal development that individuals seek in over 150 countries through the Art of Living Foundation and the service initiatives that come out of those individuals, or the programs of the International Association for Human Values, which are focused on specific sectors, whether that's education or veterans or prisoners. We're looking at helping individuals to overcome their hurdles to become agents of change in their community and their environment. So that's our platform, and I'll share more. I'm honored to be with these wonderful folks.
Thank you. Is this on? Can you hear me? Okay, good, because I am a technological idiot. My name is Paula Luff, and I am head of sustainability and impact at Inherent Group, which is an investment firm here in New York. We invest in public and private companies through an ESG lens, so a sustainability lens, and we engage pretty robustly with our portfolio companies on social and environmental and governance performance. I started my career in the NGO world, working for Catholic Relief Services and CARE, and then fell into the private sector, into the CSR space, where I led efforts at Pfizer and at Hess most recently.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adeeb Mahmoud. I'm a director at an organization called FSG. I'm based in our DC office. FSG is a social impact-focused consulting and research organization. We were founded in the year 2000 by Michael Porter at Harvard Business School and Mark Kramer. And we work across sectors and issues. So we work with the private sector, NGOs, government, as well as foundations to help accelerate social impact across different issue areas. Just one caveat, unfortunately, I'm catching a train back to DC today, so when the voice from above says 5, I have to head out. Apologies in advance for that, but I'm really happy to be here with you today.
Thank you. That voice from above, I'm always waiting for the timing on that. Okay. But yes, my name is Greg Cotton, and I'm the president and CEO of Cotton 7 Global Enterprises. We're a clean technology firm that we basically focus on infrastructure development and environmental security. And I'll go into more of that later. But first, we'll talk to you since,
Thank you. You go. All right. So the topic of this panel today, CSR and SDGs, I want to broaden it a little bit to focus on CSR, but also focus on the various ways that companies are and can work on the Sustainable Development Goals. At FSG, when we work with corporations, there's a few beliefs that guide our work. The first one is that the private sector is and will be critical to solving today's social problems, whether they're defined by SDGs, MDGs, or in other ways. The second is that the more we can connect the solving of a social problem to a company's success, to their profitability, we feel that the company or the industry will devote more resources to solving that problem, and they will be more effective in solving that social problem. And another one is that to solve social problems, companies need to be intentional about why, with whom, and how they partner. And so those are the ways that we think about engaging companies. When you look at SDGs and the way corporations and industries and the private sector is engaging, I mean, there's lots of studies and conversations, both at the individual company level as well as the platform level, about what companies could do. If you look at specific companies, there are lots of commitments companies across industries and issue areas are making. Coca-Cola has made a commitment to SDG 6 on water. Novo Nordisk, a pharmaceutical company, as you would expect, a commitment on number 3, which is health, but also on SDG 11, which is focused on sustainable cities, because Novo Nordisk has a cities initiative. Philips has made commitments on SDGs related to health and energy and sustainable consumption, and the list goes on, right? So the commitment is there. The question is, how, with the vast resources that the private sector brings, how should we think about their their engagement. And when I think about our work with corporations, we look at the broad array of ways that corporations engage with societal issues. So CSR is one way that corporations can use to engage on societal issues, which involves in using their cash grants. It involves using their people that they have and the skills and engaging in a way that enhances stakeholder relationships and builds their reputation. But engaging through the core business is also another really powerful way for corporations to engage. What we at FSG call shared value. We heard a panel earlier today with our colleagues from Save the Children talking about shared value. And that is also, we find a really powerful way. So a great example of that is the South African healthcare company called Discovery Health. And I think the insurance industry is a wonderful example of how solving that social problem is so related to the company becoming more profitable. Because if we as members of an insurance company or customers of an insurance company, if we are healthier, that goes directly to the bottom line of the insurance company who's trying to save money on healthcare costs. So what Discovery did is that they created a program called Vitality, where they provided financial incentives. We all are motivated by incentives, right? Whether it's an organization or individuals. And they gave financial incentives to their members for eating healthy or going to the gym. But only if you go to the gym over a certain number of times a week or a month. And what they found was that the people, their customers who participated in Vitality, showed a marked difference in their behavior. Gym membership went up by over 20%. And the risk-adjusted cost of hospital care for those members went down by 30%. And so this is a great example of how the health impact and the impact on the company's bottom line comes together so clearly. And so for us, we try to identify and look for those opportunities where a company, whether it's using their CSR, their philanthropy, or their core business, can engage in SDGs.
Sure. I mean, I'm a huge fan of FSG and have worked with you guys in past lives. And I think when we think about what corporations can do in achieving the SDGs, we often think of CSR, whether it's partnerships, whether it's financing. But I think we need to look beyond that. We need to look at, as an investor, we look at how companies manage their supply chain, right? So how do you treat your workers? Who are you doing business with? How sustainable is your supply chain? Are you respecting human rights? And the power of the purchasing power of companies far exceeds their philanthropy or public affairs budgets. And I think that's one area that people don't often think about. I think the other is the power to convene and connect with others, whether it's civil society or government. And I think companies, particularly large multinational companies, have tremendous sway in their communities and in their countries, and could use that power to convene and that voice for social good. And so that, I think, is a super important thing to think about. For us, we tend to work with our companies and not on 100 issues or 17 SDGs, but really try to focus in on whether it's the SDGs or some other financially material ESG issue, which are the one or two that a company can focus on that create social value, but also are critical to creating enterprise value. Because to amplify what Adeeb said, if it's not core to the business, they're not going to do it over the long term. And you guys know more than just about anyone else that if we're going to make those 2030 goals, we can't just have it as something we do for 3 years or a 2-year funding cycle or a 5-year volunteer program. We have to figure out how we all bring all of our resources to bear over the next 12, 15 years, fix the financing gap, and really achieve greater prosperity for everyone globally, not just the few, and address things like income inequality. It's going to take a lot more than the combined resources of charitable foundations, either corporate or public or private, or the combined spending power of the private sector. It's going to take all of us together figuring out how we leverage each other's resources.
it's impressive for me to be on this panel with these folks and their incredible knowledge in this sector. It's because our work really is on the core service provision on the ground and really working in the communities. But it's beautiful to be on that side of the perspective. What we see a lot of resources come into communities from the outside. Often they are misappropriated, often they are wasted. We see, as you're all familiar with, we see beautiful structures built and toilets built in communities where they're not known how to be used and where there isn't real learning and understanding. And what our focus has been to really work with the individuals so that they take full ownership. And this is such a process, right? And this is such a learning for all of us coming from the outside, wishing to do good in an environment. How does one empower someone to truly find the solutions that work for them inside their community and on the ground? And that has been our focus in learning, and my challenge to CSR and to folks who are finding the means to bring the resources into environment is to really follow the lead. And it was beautiful to hear the conversation on dignity from Megha Desai, and how do you help people to feel that they have the capacity to truly find the solutions in their environment that are going to be sustainable and lasting for them. And so we help individuals to move through that process of accessing their own solutions and to overcome the hurdles they're facing, whether that's alcoholism, or challenges that farmers are facing in India from having using chemicals for years, and now we have tremendous farmer suicide, and they're not familiar with how to reinstate organic farming, right? So these are solutions and skills and knowledge that exist on the ground, and they exist within the individuals we're looking to serve, but unless we're very skillful in drawing out that information and drawing out those skills, they are pushed aside for our great and well-financed ideas. So this is really the perspective that we take, and it's a beautiful collaboration if we're willing to do that listening.
Okay. Well, let me tell you this. A few years ago, a couple of geology professors, they invented this technology, and I'll talk about this a lot tomorrow, but that solidifies soil. Turns it into basically limestone. It starts a natural process. What they did was they sped up the natural process of solidifying soil. Now, if you just took a pile of dirt and left it there, it'd take about 800 years. All right? What they've done is come up with this solution where it solidifies soil. Now, for the average person, you look at that and you say, well okay, that's great. And that's what I did at first. But then I started asking questions like, can you make a road out of it? They said, well, we don't know. We never thought of that. So we kind of took it over. What they were using it for and wanted to use it for was for landfills, under landfills, solidify the soil so it wouldn't leak into the ground and, cause all these environmental disasters we have. And another one was to encase nuclear waste. So, okay, that's pretty noble. I said, but what about roads? And I said, well, we don't know because that's not what it was for. So we started testing it. Military bases, all the soil in some of the training sites. Well, guess what? It works. And not only does it work, and this base we use it on, of course, they're amazed because all the chemicals they use are clean chemicals and they're natural. Not only that, they were driving on it within 24 hours. And not only that, it was tanks and Jeeps and 18-wheelers. Not only that, when it rains on it, it makes it harder. So now we're talking to South Sudan and other places and saying, well, roads, we talk about climate-resistant roads, not asphalt or concrete, because you're not going to put asphalt or concrete in the middle of a desert. It's not going to last. So we start asking more questions. Industry experts. I'm sure you've heard about the Fukushima disaster. We talked to people and said, well, you can inject this into the ground as a liquid and solidify around there. And there's, well, yeah. And the professors look at you like, well, of course, it's still the same thing. So now, and there's over 400 and something nuclear reactors. And what we can do is solidify all around them so that if it happens, or actually we could probably stop the one that's happening right now in Japan because it's still leaking since 2011. So this is the kind of thing that we're talking about. South Sudan has less than 150 miles of paved roads, the entire country. Okay, so how is it possible to meet your 17 sustainable goals when you have no roads? They have a rainy season that can last for 7 months. And within that rainy season, it shuts down, according to the World Bank, it shuts down 60% of the country for 7 months. And that's why, again, we're meeting with them at 6 o'clock, as a matter of fact, this evening. We've had several meetings with them. And that's what we're going to try to do. Now, one of our construction people, partners, I said, well, at a small construction company, I said, how many miles can you do a day? This is a small company. He said, 5 miles a day. That's unheard of. I said, well, what does it take to do 10? Well, we double this and do that. Imagine 10 miles of road a day, being able to do that, solidifying the soil that you can drive on anywhere. These are the things we're talking about sustainability. How many people can you feed? Getting medicine and doing all that, the World Food Program and all that. These are the things that are important to us. What about treating under pipelines? When pipelines leak, what do you worry about? It going into the aquifer. We can treat under with that, then it's not going to penetrate. These are the things. So it started with 2 uses, now we're up to 35. That's why I say infrastructure and environmental security. And that's what we're doing. And that's how the impact that we're trying to make. So the goal is with South Sudan is to get them into a position, because you can't be successful unless you're in position to be successful. And so that the country, with its natural resources, they can start to thrive. They have, I think, the 4th largest oil reserves in Africa. They have abundance, like I said, of natural resources. And what we're trying to do is to get them there. And then we work with Water for South Sudan. They drill wells. They've drilled over 300 wells, okay, saving people's lives. And then there's building mines in South Sudan. You have Sebastian back there who started this program. And he started with nothing. He was one of the
17 hours.
I knew it. It's time for him to go. We know that. Okay. He started this. He was one of the lost boys who was rescued from South Sudan, in the Civil War. Got to the United States. In Rochester, they brought him in, trained him, sent him to school. And what did he do? He went back, and he started a school. And it was a school for boys. And then a girl walks up to him and says, well, what about us? So now there's 612 girls going to school. So I look at this and say, if he can do that, now, by all rights, he should not even be alive. If you read his story, you would say, oh, my God, But he's got over 1,500 students now. So these are the kind of people I think are heroes. But so my point being, in order for us to meet these goals, you really have to set the infrastructure and the foundation so you're able to do that. So,
can I just mention one other story, and then I do need to leave. Your story was about Sudan was really interesting. So there's a really interesting story about a Scandinavian fertilizer company called Yara working in Tanzania. And what they realized was there's a huge business opportunity for them to sell more of their fertilizer to farmers in Tanzania. But they couldn't because in a developing country like Tanzania, it was a systemic problem, right? So many things were not working. The tax system, the tariffs that were there, the ports were broken, the roads weren't there. And you look at something like that and you feel like, wow, how would we ever solve something like that? Well, led by Yara, they were able to develop an initiative called the Southern Agricultural Growth Corridor of Tanzania, SAGCOT. 60 organizations, multi-year, multi-million-dollar initiative started in 2009. And with the government of Tanzania, international aid agencies, and local organizations, they've been able to take on the majority of those problems within the country of Tanzania. Tens of thousands of farmers, their incomes have gone up, and Yara's market share and profits have gone up by 40 to 50%. So it is possible. The private sector needs to be a critical part of it, but they need to be very intentional about how do they bring in other partners, because there's no way one company or one industry can take on some of these systemic issues.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You said you had some examples of some of the things that you've done with Inherent Group.
Yeah, so for us, for example, trying to think of some good ones. So we engage in a number of issues with companies. For one, they were so proud of their sustainable supply chain and their partnership with subsistence farmers for commodity procurement in the rubber space. We said, that's really awesome, and you have a great sustainability report, a beautiful story. But talk to us about how you actually interact with the farmers. How do you actually pay them? How are you providing training and technical support? Talk to us a little bit when you tell us that you're certifying 400 or 500 of your largest suppliers as sustainable. What does that mean? And who are they? Is it your supplier of copier paper in your headquarters? Or are we talking about an interface with emerging markets where you're really building capacity, right, at the country level? And sometimes they're a little surprised. They're not used to getting those kinds of questions from investors, so they try to kind of toe the PR party line because it's not always the right person in the room to answer that question. In other cases, we really look at diversity and gender equity in our portfolio companies, and we had one company that is in the apparel space, and they were so proud that 30% of their board of directors were female. And my colleague, who's actually a financial analyst, it wasn't even me saying this, said to them, "That's wonderful, but 90% of your customers are women. 90% of the workers in your factories overseas, maybe 100% are women. So 30% might be good in an extractive company, not so much in your industry where that's your, women are really your consumer, you're the source of your labor, and you're the source of market intelligence." So those are the kinds of conversations we're beginning to have, and other investors are. It's not just us. When I was on the other side of the table, working on the corporate side, at first, investors might be somewhat interested in the philanthropy work or some of the partnership work that was going on. But toward the end of my run in corporate America, they weren't that interested in whether or not we were funding education programs. They thought that was nice and probably something companies should do as a matter of course of corporate citizenship. But they were really interested in what we were doing to manage our human rights impacts, our environmental impacts, what our grievance mechanism looked like, what kinds of complaints we were getting. Super sophisticated questions. And so I think, that when I was on the company side doing this work, I was grateful to have the resources and support and tremendous partners in civil society to get some good done. But I always felt that, as a corporate staff person, there was a limit to my ability to influence management. And I think, at the end of the day, the chief executive officer, the chief financial officer, this, you're a CEO, listens to their staff, but really listens to what their investors are saying. And I think the conversation is beginning to change. It's not just enough to tick the boxes and obey laws and regulations and maybe send a dividend check to your shareholders every so often. Investors and society are expecting companies to be at the table in full partnership with civil society and government, helping roll up their sleeves and helping support some meaningful solutions to sustainable development.
Well, I understand that, but
Gregory,
why?
Gregory, we're out of time.
Oh, we're out of time?
Yeah.
Just when I was getting
I was
good.
just about to ask about women making 15% less than men. Why is that still?
Oh, well, we could be here all night on that one.
That could be a whole separate conference.
No, but thank you all. That was very enlightening hearing your different perspectives on the matter. Before we ask you to take your seat, we'd like you to receive the award.
Oh, yeah.